Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Hello and welcome to PMI's podcast, Uncommon Sense, Tools to Improve Your Work Forever. I'm Susanna Clark and today I'm joined by Des Kelly. Des, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi Sue. So Des Kelly, partner consultant for PMI, and I have been for the last 19 years or so. Prior to that, I was the Director of Quality for Rolls-Royce and Bentley Motor Cars, and worked in the automotive industry for a significant number of years in senior positions. And I also lecture at the University of Warwick when I get the opportunity. And for PMI, I work with leadership teams from companies all around the world on helping them develop ways to optimize their business.
Thanks, Des. So we're here today to talk about strategy, and this is a part of a series of podcasts. Now, strategy is broken into three areas, and this episode is specifically to talk about understanding the world in which we operate. And we're going to talk about PESTEL today. So, Des, first of all, before you go into the PESTEL tool, could you just remind our audience about what understanding the world in which we operate is all about?
Okay, so understanding the world in which we operate is important because we're going to have to make some choices. And those choices are the things that ultimately we're going to deploy across the organisation. So if we're going to make choices, what's the data on which those choices have been made? So we need to understand the world in which we're operating. And if you remember from the earlier episodes, we effectively have two environments that we're interested in. One is the primary environment, which was covered by Porter's. It's a two-way environment. The things we do influence our competitors and our customers, etc. But equally, the things our customers and competitors do can influence us. And we need to have tools or a lens to look through to permit us to understand what's happening there. So the other environment that we're interested in is one we refer to as the macro environment. Now, this is a one-way transaction. It impacts upon us and our organizations. We rarely influence it. A good example would be the recent COVID pandemic that we had. The COVID pandemic across the world impacted upon pretty much every organization, but our organizations themselves could really do nothing to impact upon the COVID pandemic itself. So it's this one-way transaction we've got. So we need to have a detailed understanding of the macro environment, the things that are impacting upon and influencing us. And the tool or the lens we use for doing that is what we refer to as PESTEL. Now, I selected these tools because of their frequency of being taught in business schools and universities. So most people will have come across them, but have they seen it in the light of why are we using it? So the PESTEL's tool, and PESTEL is an acronym for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. And they are 6 dimensions or aspects of the macro environment that we need to study to understand what are the things that are going on in this environment that could impact upon us or that we can take advantage of. And I think that's where it's useful. So if we look at them individually, first of all, in most cases, it's obvious. But if we look at political, right, so for the countries in which we're operating in or being influenced by, for example, are the governments stable or unstable? What are things like the tax policies? What, for example, are the government involvement in trade? Are there trade unions in the area? What sort of regulations do they have? So the political environment is one that we want to study, and we put a lens up in front of us, our eyes, and just study what that is. The next one, the economic, is for the environments we're operating in. What's the growth rate? What's the exchange rate? How easy is it to come by credit? Do people spend or do they save? What's the gross domestic product of the country or area that we're operating in? So economic. And there are lots of other things you could do. Now, social is the things like the population size, the death rates, the birth rates, the demographics within the country, the wealth distribution, those sort of features within social. Now, technological is the things like automation. What's the level of research and development into the area? How easy is it to access new technology? Is there internet infrastructure? Is there communications infrastructure? So what's the environment that we're operating into? Now, the next one, environmental, is one which has certainly emerged as one of the most significant impactors upon any organisation strategy. So when we're looking at environment, we're obviously looking at things like climate and the change and the impact it may have on how our products or services are consumed and used in those particular areas.
Can I ask this, and within that, are we also looking at sustainability? So our own impact on the environment and whether the products or services that we're using are impacting negatively on the environment or not?
Well, here's the thing, is that I think at this point we're looking at the outside world,
right,
and how it's influencing us, not how we are influencing that. How we are going to impact upon that environmental, how we're going to respond to the macro environment. It comes from when we then translate this knowledge that we've generated from the PESTEL analysis and from the Porter's analysis, and we translate it into a study that's going to be conducted within our SWOT analysis. And as we said on previous ones, is that the Porter's and PESTEL analysis, and particularly in this case PESTEL, right, is used to populate the opportunities and threats in our SWOT analysis. So we are using the data later. Now, how we respond to the opportunities and threats is exactly what you've just said, is that our sustainability credentials, how are we going to respond to this input or impulse? What are we going to be doing about it? So you've actually raised an interesting point there, Suze, is that the Porter's and PESTEL is definitely standing on a spot and looking out and getting as much data as you possibly can that can be proven, robustly understood, so that you are understanding the world in which you're operating in. How you respond is going to be part of the strategic choices. Comes a little bit later. So don't fog. That's a tip for everybody. Don't create a fog by trying to get things to do too many things at once. Keep it clean. Keep it absolutely precise. PESTEL is the model or the lens that we use to look outside at the macro environment. So it's a good point to raise at that point, Suze. So that was the environmental that we looked at there. So the last of them is legal, and that's going to be things like antitrust laws, employment laws, consumer protection acts, copyright, maybe health and safety laws, education laws, those sorts of things that are going to be anything that you need to respond to from a legal perspective. So what are they? And I think the interesting thing is that you can take PESTEL as a macro environment, but it could be each individual country that you're operating in, or maybe even locality that you're operating in. Do things change? And it is just an ability to stop and focus in and understand particular characteristics, to understand how they are impacting upon our organisation. The trick will be then to understand that, develop theories about how you might respond or otherwise to that piece of data.
My last question, Des, is related to PESTEL. Any particular tips that you would recommend to people who are thinking of using this tool?
So for PESTEL analysis specifically, I think it's the most sensible route forward is to find organizations or entities that can provide this information to you in a way which is unbiased and which is carefully collected. Because bear in mind what we're going to do here. We're going to use this information to influence our decisions on the direction our business is going to go in. So one of the key things you need to have is a compendium of known, trusted sources from which you can establish the data. And I would also try to keep, if you can, consistency with those people that are giving you this information, so you can detect when a change has occurred. Because in reality, it's the changes that we have to respond to, not the fact that something is stated. Because it's the changes of status quo which are the things that are going to give us the instability to our strategy. So safe, trusted partners for the collection of this information. And again, as we had with porters, it's not something you do once a year or once every 2 years. It is something that should be modified as the data changes and your knowledge is enhanced.
Okay. Thank you very much, Des. So as Des mentioned, we previously recorded an episode on Porter's 5 Forces. And so do look out for that as well, because that will also help inform you when you're thinking about your strategy. Thank you very much for joining us today. Don't forget, all of our content is available on our Knowledge Hub, and you can find that at pmi.co.uk. If you have any questions for Des, then please do get in touch. You can send an email into team@pmi.co.uk. We look forward to hearing from you. And do join us next time when we're going to be talking about how we use SWOT in preparing our understanding of the world in which we operate in order to write our strategy. Thank you very much, Des, for your time today, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.